Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Crash Course Studio. Welcome to the show, and kind of as predicted a little bit ago, not really predicted more so, but I did mention on my most recent Leaks episode that, hey, spoiler season for Modern Horizons 3 isn't until probably like, I don't know, late May? But you might see me again at some point talking about Modern Horizons because some leaks happened, and where there's some leaks, there's usually another leak in the ship somewhere, right? And this ship is going under at this point because we've got so many leaks out there. Let's jump into them. So, first up, apologies for the potato quality, but these are the images that were online. That being said, enhance, just kidding. No, there's not technology out there that can actually enhance a photograph that, you know, just doesn't have that kind of image quality already. That being said, some internet sleuths, as well as myself, tried our bestest to try to, you know, read what is on these cards. And actually, there's a couple of images. Let me show the other one real quick, too. So, actually, other two. There's two more images. That being said, whoever took these images clearly took them on a, phone from, the 90s. Those that didn't really exist back then really too much. But yes, anyways, there are some cards that are somewhat legible, if I could talk, and others that are not as much. That being said, we're trying to do our best to figure out what these exactly mean. Thank you to everyone on Reddit who, well, did their best to read these. And this one's actually quite easy to see, though. For whatever reason, all of them don't have this kind of quality, even though this quality is not the best. It's better than the other ones. Harbinger of the Seas. Let's read this one really quick. A 2/2 Merfolk Wizard for 1 blue. Non-basic lands are islands. So, yeah, this is basically Magus of the Moon, essentially, but in blue, I guess. And as a Merfolk and a Wizard, those are two types that are very, very relevant, essentially, when it comes to tribal type decks. So, yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate, I guess not that I don't anticipate this seeing play in a Merfolk or Wizard deck. It's not a stacks card per se, but kind of, because it can shut players out of being able to play their cards if they don't have the right mana fixing in play. Yeah, because your non-basics turn into islands. So, I mean, when it comes to the kinds of decks that are going to utilize this one, if you're using Magus of the Moon and those kinds of cards to, well, change everyone's lands into mountains, sure, change lands and islands now. Why not? That being said, yeah, I mean, I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Keep in mind, with all these leaks, they are not confirmed to be real cards. Now, 99% of the time, they end up being real cards because Wizards will never confirm them, and then during spoiler season, they'll be like, look at these cards that no one's ever seen before! And they'll completely just ignore the fact that they were already leaked, essentially, but they're going to be like, yeah, it's new! And they're not. But yeah, we'll see in spoiler season if these are actually real or not. So again, take everything I say with a grain of salt in this episode, especially these upcoming ones, which again, are going to be custom versions of cards that we saw part of a grainy picture of, and we're trying to do our best to essentially see, okay, what was that card? Some of them are easier to read than others. That being said, my apologies if any of these are slightly off, but this is as close as we could find, essentially. Well, between, myself and people on Reddit. This is as close as we got to what the cards potentially are. So here we go. Ulalek, Fused Atrocity, that's what we saw apparently. A 2/5 Eldrazi, legendary creature with Devoid, so it has no color. Wow, Wizards Devoid. Everyone loves that mechanic. No. Anyways, it apparently, it looks like it has like the mana cost of basically Reaper King. 2 in a white, or 2 or a white, 2 or a blue, 2 or a black, 2 or a red, 2 or a green. So it can either cost anywhere between, 5 to 10 mana, essentially. It also says, whenever you cast an Eldrazi spell, you may pay colorless. If you do, copy all spells you control. Then copy all other activating triggered abilities you control. You would choose targets for the copies. Yeah, that's interesting. This is quite fascinating if this ends up being a real card, because this, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this, but this, I believe, just kind of explodes Eldrazi Tribal into 5 color now, which previously Eldrazi was the exact opposite of that with colorless decks, essentially. Like, I believe every single legendary Eldrazi we've had so far has been colorless. Please let me in the comments below if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that is correct. Like, they have 3 Eldrazi Titans plus, whatever that other one is that, it's like Cascade, that one. All of them have been in colorless. This, I believe, is the very first legendary creature that is, again, even 1 color, but going all the way up to 5 color. yeah, that's going to be exploding Eldrazi tribal in a different direction. Again, of course, like, all the Eldrazi are technically, like, no color because they have Devoid. But, yeah, you can't exactly fit a Deep Fathom Skulker in your Eldrazi tribal deck. But now you can because you've got a 5-color Eldrazi tribal deck. So if this ends up being real, yeah, I can see there being a rush to get those Eldrazi cards that are in the different colors that you haven't been able to use in the other Eldrazi decks. That being said, it's kind of interesting because, again, whenever you're casting an Eldrazi spell, you can pay colorless and copy all the spells you control. So, like, if you are, I mean, so typically, I guess this would just be doubling up an Eldrazi spell, which is very interesting. Like, being able to, like, play an Eldrazi spell, pay 2 mana, essentially, and then copy that one. Typically, you're not going to have any other spells on the stack. I mean, I guess if you have, like, Vidalcan Ori out, you can flash things, so you can have things on the stack at the same time. That being said, there are going to be, like, tribal instants probably and that kind of stuff that you could then, like, you know, do that with, so you can copy more things. You can also copy triggered abilities and activated abilities. It's going to be interesting to see. Again, we're going to get a lot of Eldrazi in Modern Horizons 3, it seems like. And with that, again, more potential, again, instant Eldrazi things. So being able to do that and copy up activating triggered abilities, very interesting. Yeah, this one's got a lot of potential again, and I think would be very, very, very popular because this is the first time we're seeing a 5-color Eldrazi commander. This is the first time we're seeing any kind of Eldrazi commander that is more than 0 colors, essentially. So, yeah, this has potential if this is actually real, and it's a pretty spicy, pretty interesting effect. Being able to copy things is very powerful. Being able to copy any of your spells just paying an extra 2 mana. If your entire deck is just Eldrazi, you know, like tribal Eldrazi spells plus Eldrazi, it's going to be quite interesting. Moving on. And again, please take everything I say on this episode with a grain of salt, especially since, number one, these images are potato quality. So I'm trying my best, and plus those people on Reddit, thank you so much, trying all of our best to get these right, and then also they are not confirmed to be real. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt. Don't just run out to go, like, buy every single Eldrazi card that you can right now because you're like, oh, there's going to be a 5-color one. I mean, it looks like that's probably going to be the case, but we could be wrong on that. And also, again, they're not confirmed to be real. So keep all that in mind. That being said, like, with those images, that'd be really hard to fake all of that. Like, all that packaging and all those different cards, that'd be pretty hard to fake all of that. Not saying I'm not putting it past someone to do that, but it'd be pretty hard to fake all of that. That being said, next up, this name, I don't think we could really make out, or the creature type, so I'm just guessing on them, and I'm probably wrong on those, so my apologies. But King of the Lurgoyf, that's what I'm going to say with it, okay? A 5/6 Lurgoyf for 5 mana in Jund. Whenever a Lurgoyf is put to your graveyard from anywhere but the battlefield, put it onto the battlefield. That's spicy. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a Tarmogoyf token. This, if it ends up being real, is really cool. I mean, like, we've never seen, like, a Lurgoyf tribal commander yet, I don't think. I mean, and I don't want comments like, oh, Morophon is. Come on, okay? Like, I understand that Morophon, technically any commander could be tribal for anything. You could just throw that out there. And, like, yeah, Morophon is, like, the solve all for, like, all tribes. But still, come on, all right? Like, an actual dedicated one, yeah, there you go. Very first one, I believe, might be the first legendary Lurgoyf too, potentially, I would assume. Regardless, and I don't know if this is actually a Lurgoyf because it might not be. I couldn't make this one out at all, and I couldn't find anything on the internet and people like saying like, this is the name, or this is what it is, but like the text looked a little more legible. That being said, very spicy. I mean, again, if you get a Lurgoyf in your graveyard from anywhere but the battlefield, you put it right on the battlefield. There are, in black, certain cards like Entomb that you're like, okay, tutor a card from my library to my graveyard. That becomes, Entomb especially, becomes a 1-mana instant speed. Get any Lurgoyf out of your deck right into play, which is very spicy. I mean, that being said, like, what you're going to be doing this more so probably because Lurgoyfs really care about the graveyard potentially, or typically, and things that are like in your graveyard, and they get pumped based off of that. So, yeah, just like mass mill yourself. Get a ton of things in your graveyard. And then, yeah, when you hit Lurgoyfs off the top of your deck, put them in your graveyard, you are getting them right into play. That seems like a very spicy thing. Obviously, also discard works too. Again, like if you have just like free discard outlets, like what's Scourge Familiar, whatever the one is, like discard a card, gain a black. I love that one. Can't remember the name of it though. It's 5 mana in black. Anyways, yeah, getting free value off of discard. Yeah, just discard a Lurgoyf. Get it right into play essentially too. Really spicy ways to cheat them into play. It's really cool. There's only so many Lurgoyfs out there, but I do like this one. I like the potential of it. It's pretty cool. And, yeah, it's just very spicy. It's very powerful, potentially. Again, if you can just, like, literally tutor them from your library into your graveyard or just like Morality Shift. I think that's the card that's like 7 mana in black that's like exchange your library in your graveyard, essentially. So technically they'd be, from your library put in your graveyard. So you'd be like, oh, okay, I just got every single one of my creatures basically into my graveyard. Let's put them all into play. Do some really crazy things with that. Like if like a Warstorm Surge in play, that could be great as well. Win with that. But yeah, also being able to, again, whenever one of our creatures you control deal combat to a player, you get a Tarmogoyf token. That is really cool. Tarmogoyf, obviously the most famous of all the Goyfs. Yeah, that's really cool. And of course, keep in mind, Populate can be really, really good with that. Black doesn't really have, to my knowledge, like too many Populate effects, if any at all. But red and green definitely do. Some really good ones. So yeah, being able to use and abuse that, get more and more tokens into play. Yeah, and of course, ways like, if I don't mention like Doubling Season, I'm going to be in trouble. Yeah, Doubling Season, ways that double up tokens, parallel lives, obviously can be very good with that as well. Yeah, a very interesting, very spicy commander. This ends up being an actual one. Yeah, we shall see. We shall see. Next up, Omo, Queen of Vesuva? I think that's right. Yeah, a 1/5 Shapeshifter Noble, and I probably already should have said this. Thank you, MTG.design, for existing. That's how I actually made these custom cards that are, again, just like, it is custom cards, but again, it's like, I'm not just making these cards up. It's off of the images. Some of the wording might be slightly off, but here we go. A 1/5 Shapeshifter Noble, because that's a thing, for 2 instant make color. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, put an everything counter up to 1 target creature and up to 1 target land. Everything counter. It's like an everything bagel, Anyways, yeah. Creatures you control with everything counters on them, because those are a thing, are every creature type. Lands you control with everything counters on them are every land type. Interesting. I mean, this one, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting type deck, because you can definitely... It's kind of like you can do like Shapeshifter Tribal, essentially. You can do like Changeling Tribal in a way, if you really want to go about that. So you could have like a bunch of different Lord effects. Like okay, Wizard Lord, Lord effects. You could have Elf Lord effects. You could have, whatever other Lord effects there are in these 2 colors, essentially. And then get all those in play. And then when this ETBs or attacks, really easy to use the ETB, obviously. Abuse the ETB since you have a bunch of blink effects in blue. So being able to use and abuse that to get those counters on those creatures to then just have, like, again, like a tribal deck in a way. So that's one way to go about this. That being said, with like lands, sure, like giving them every land type, I guess that's interesting. I don't know how effective that's really going to be. Like, you could use, I guess, domain cards and take advantage of those, I guess, with this kind of a commander. I mean, you're still stuck in Simic, like you're in a 2-color, strategy. I don't really know how much this one's actually going to see play. It's like an interesting concept, but like it's kind of slow in how it goes about it. Again, just ETB or attack, you get 1 target creature. I guess you get 1 target creature and up to 1 target land, so you get both at the same time. So it's like you're getting both. You get like perfect mana fixing with your lands throughout time, which is great. So that's like at the base level. Domain effects as well, I guess, as well. I guess if you're stealing your opponent's spells, like you need like, mana of any color to like cast them, you can. So there you go. But yeah, it's an interesting design for sure. I don't know really how much, play it's going to see, but it's interesting. I guess, yeah, if you go, the way that I would build it, the way I think could be decently popular is tribal. So just being able to, like, just get a bunch of different Lord effects from any kind of tribes, essentially, throw them all into the same deck, and essentially just say, oh, okay, cool. You're now a Changeling, essentially. You're now a Changeling. You're a Changeling. You're a Changeling. Like Masquerade Nexus. I mean, Masquerade Nexus just solves that, essentially. But, of course, this is a way to have it in the command zone as a commander, so you can actually just keep getting that effect again and again and again to hopefully get all your creatures pumped to oblivion. Moving on. Kraven the Undertaker. Okay, I made up the name Kraven because it kind of looked like that, but I don't think it's that. But the Undertaker is what we could see on the card, most likely. 0/5 Human Warrior for 4 mana in Jund. When it gets +X+0 or XC Grace power among creature cards in your graveyard. Spicy. Super spicy. Whenever it attacks, each player mills a card. Cool. During each of your turns, you may play a card or cast a spell from among cards in graveyards that are put there from libraries this turn. Super cool. So, this one obviously benefits you heavily for getting creatures in your graveyard that have a lot of power. What is it? Malignus? Is that the one? Like, ones that have, like, variable power, like Beast of Burden, essentially. That one has, like, power equal to the number of creatures in play. Those, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this, judges out there, but I believe, again, like if it has like a star on it essentially, and it's in your graveyard, it still like counts whatever, like Lord of Extinction, it still counts its power even if it's not in play. It's like, okay, like Lord of Extinction's power in your graveyard is still equal to the number of, cards in all graveyards or whatever it is, creature cards in all graveyards, I think it's cards in all graveyards, or Malignus, like half of your opponents with the highest life total, half of their highest life total. So basically, being able to, play around with those variables essentially and say, okay, again, I mill a Beast of Burden in my graveyard. Now my Undertaker has, 20 power because there's 20 creatures in play, so this can hit really, really hard. You could very easily make this into a 2-shot, if not a 1-shot KO. And of course, you're in red, so you've got double strike effects as well. You've got plenty of ways to make this evasive as well, get through like Menace, that kind of stuff as well. Fear could work as well. But yeah, on attack though, everyone milling 1 card. That's nice to add to your count essentially, and potentially get you a creature that has, more power, obviously. But more importantly, again, during your turn, being able to play a card or cast a spell from among cards in graveyards put there from libraries this turn. So again, if you're milling yourself or your opponents, you get access to those cards that were just milled, which is nice. It doesn't just count just what, the 1 card that is milled by this. Obviously, if you get like extra combats, you mill even more. But of course, it even counts like if you're just, milling in different ways. Like if you have like a Ghoul Caller's Bell, that's going to be really, really good in this kind of deck. Like repeatable mill everyone effects. That one's just a 1-mana artifact, tap, everyone mills 1 card. Those kinds of cards are going to be great because it gives you access to more and more and more. Again, you only get to play 1 card or cast 1 spell, I believe. You can play a card or cast a spell. So you can either play a land or cast a spell. That being said, yeah, it's a pretty spicy card again. I would definitely play around with this one, just trying to get just massive creatures and graveyards. And again, like I mentioned earlier with our Tarmogoy friend, Lorgoy friend, yeah, there are tutors in black like Entomb that are just like, get a creature out of your library into your graveyard. So go get that thing that has an absurd amount of power into your graveyard, and then all of a sudden be like, oh, I guess Death Shadow would work too, right? No, because that one would also count its own power losing. Anyways, being able to get a certain creature into your graveyard and saying like, oh, my commander now has 20 power, great, or 25 power, whatever it is, be able to hit someone, potentially out of nowhere even, and take them out with this. Yeah, I can see this one being used in Voltron and being used in Mill. Yeah, definitely some interesting ways to go about building around this one. Next up, Gy-Joli? Moog Ancient, a 2/4 elemental for 4 mana in Simic. When it enters the battlefield, and sometimes I copy and just pasted this without actually changing it. So yeah, when it enters the battlefield, not ETBs, create a 1/1 Green Forest Dryad land creature token for each time you've cast your commander for the command zone this game. Beginning of each combat, land creature control get +X/+X until end of turn where X is its power. Yeah, making those Forest Dryads can be very, very powerful because they are land creature tokens. So like, it's kind of like Dryad Arbor basically that you're making again and again. They are more susceptible to removal, but again, since they are land, it's like you're still like making basically like a mana dork each turn, and also like things that can untap lands can help that too, like early harvest. So yeah, being able to just ETB, make a number of Forest Rides based on the number of times you cast your commander from the command zone, that can be huge. Obviously, you're kind of like getting like half the amount of mana back from like your commander attacks each time you do that. And obviously, if you got things like Parallel Lives in play, if you've got things like what's the other one? Goodness, Doubling Season. My goodness. It's early. Yeah, Doubling Season, those kind of things to double up the amount that you're getting. Or you've got that one enchantment that can reduce the command tax essentially each time. That can help as well. I'm sure there's some infinite combos that can work with this, obviously. You would need haste on your creatures to actually tap them because they are creatures, so you can't just tap them for mana right away. That being said, Concurrent Crossroads is a thing. But yeah, being able to give your land creatures extra power is nice. It's doubling up their power, which obviously just a 1/1 does not do that much. You can obviously use other things like Awaken or like any kind of like creature lands as well that can really help. That being said, of course, you've got access to some anthems in green. So yeah, utilize some anthems, pump your creatures, and then double up their, their power. You can do that too. Interesting. It's a very interesting design. Yeah, I mean, players love ramping, and this is just, hey, play it, and it ramps, essentially, each and every single time. That being said, it is, like, instead of, like, go get a land, put it into play, or just, like, straight up make a land, which I don't think any commander really does that. This does make lands, but they are creatures. They are more susceptible to removal again. You can't just get around like a Wrath of God like you could like a Rixmathes, I guess, is a ramp commander that technically gets around Wraths, or like other ones that would like ETB, like Golos used to, right? ETB, go get a land. So this doesn't get around Wraths, but of course you got ways to protect those creatures as well, like Heroic Intervention, that kind of stuff too. It's a very interesting design. We shall see. Again, I will keep mentioning, take everything I say with a grain of salt. These might be fake. Moving on. Spawnbed Protector, a 6/8 Eldrazi for 7 mana. At the beginning of your end step, return to 1 target Eldrazi creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Create 2 1/1 colorless Eldrazi sign creature tokens. They have sacrifice creature, add colorless. So this is not a legendary creature that we are seeing. This is one that's probably in. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong on this, but like I believe, is this one in the I don't know if these are like pre-cons, like main set. I'm not sure actually. I couldn't really like make out like the symbols, so let me know if you can make those out. But basically, yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of Eldrazi in Modern Horizons 3 from what we've seen so far. This one seems quite spicy and definitely could see playing Eldrazi decks because, hey, getting those Eldrazi back out of your graveyard, you know, on your end step, it's at your end step, so, like, you can't just, like, if this was upkeep, it would be better. I mean, it's better in that you get it quicker because it's your end step, but it's worse in that, like, upkeep would be like, okay, I get something back that I can then utilize on my turn. So I guess technically it's better because you get it quicker. So there you go. But yes, being able to choose recur Eldrazi, that's huge because, of course, you've got some really heavy hitting Eldrazi. That being said, like, the heaviest hitting ones, like the old school ones where it's like when it hits the graveyard, shuffle your graveyard in your library, the Titan Shuffle type effects, you can't get those back, obviously, but they get back in your library. But essentially, and those actually work against this in a way, so keep that in mind. But you're probably still including those in Eldrazi Tribal. That being said, yeah, being able to recur your best Eldrazi, that's nice. And also, hey, get like free 2 mana. Lovely. Yeah, being able to just get 2 Eldrazi Scions, that's pretty huge. Just an extra free 2 mana or 2 blockers or 2 creatures. Of course, like you might have some pump effects as well. I can help them out too. Yeah, that's quite nice. So yeah, 7 mana, that's a good amount of value. And again, it's a 6/8. That's kind of thing with Eldrazi. Like, even if it does cost a good amount of mana, it gives you a good effect. And also, it still has a decent amount of power and toughness. Moving on. Inverse Behemoth. This one's weird. A 2/4 Eldrazi for 4 mana, 2 colorless. Beginning of combat on your turn, switch the power and toughness of any number of target creatures till end of turn. That is really interesting. A Ricksmithy's commander decks out there, you are going to be in trouble if this is ever played against you. That's like wall tribal, essentially, you know, defender. If you're playing against someone that has a bunch of 0, you know, whatever, 0/5, 0/8, well, it doesn't matter how much toughness you have. If you can switch their toughness with their power, those creatures are gone, which I find to be hilarious. That's really funny. And again, it is, I believe, again, this, and the wording could be off, but yeah, I believe this would be any numbers. So you could, again, if you have creatures like this one, like, okay, like I want to be able to hit for 4, it can get through, cool. 2 toughness, I don't want that. So yeah, or I don't want 2 power, so you swap that, obviously. That being said, obviously, you could have other ones that have an absurd amount of power with a low amount of toughness, swap those, or the other way around. And of course, your opponent's like, again, you're just doing what is best for you, essentially just a mass inverse effect on your, you know, combat. It's just on combat during your turn. If you have combat on your turn, yeah. So not every single combat. But yeah, being able to swap it, you know, with every creature for what is best for you, do so. And again, of course, if you're playing against, you know, walls, you're playing against defenders, you can potentially take creatures out too, which I think is quite funny. Again, playing against a Ricksmithy's deck and being like, oh, okay, I wipe your board. Ha! That could be quite nice. Next up, Ulamog's Dreadsire, a 10/10 for 10 mana Eldrazi with Vigilance. Ward to sacrifice a permanent mana value 1 or greater. There we go, Ward again, because things need Ward, right? Wizards, right? Tap, create a 10/10 on colorless Eldrazi creature token. So this one is kind of reminiscent of, what's the twin one? The one that, like, it costs 10, and when you cast it, you get another 10/10, essentially. This is reminiscent of that one, but different. It's a 10/10 for 10, same thing. This one has a little bit of protection again, so to actually sacrifice something that is not a token, which is nice. And yeah, and I guess non-land either too. This does have Vigilance, so you can swing freely with it and then still activate that ability. That being said, of course, this works really well with untap effects. This does go infinite with Intruder Alarm. There you go. And now that you have potentially a 5-color, you know, Eldrazi Tribal Commander, potentially, Intruder Alarm could go infinite with this in an Eldrazi Tribal deck, which it hasn't been able to yet. I guess, again, technically, should have mentioned this before too, yes, Morophon could be an Eldrazi Tribal deck. So, yes, for those of you who've been commenting, what about Morophon? I've got a Morophon Eldrazi deck. Yes, okay, I understand Morophon is, again, a tribal commander for any tribe. That being said, we have a dedicated one now, potentially. Regardless, a very interesting card. Again, it's kind of reminiscent of that one. Less powerful to start, but more powerful overall, because, like, that one you get, like, the 2 10/10s right away. This one, it's, you know, not right away, but it is vigilant. It does protect itself, and over time, you are getting more and more 10/10s. And a 10/10 factory is very, very powerful. Opponents don't stop you. They're going to get taken out quite easily. Moving on, we've got Scion. I'm thinking about, like, Warstorm Surge with that. Ouch. Scion of Ulamog. This one I couldn't really read the name too well, but the other things I could read decently well. I think the mana value was something else I couldn't read too well either, but, like, I'm guessing 7. Let me know if you read something else. An 8/6 Eldrazi for, again, 7-ish. Whenever you attack, choose odd or even creatures with mana value of that quality can't block this turn. That's what I read. I've never seen that, I don't think, but it's interesting if they're starting to use that terminology, that quality. Each other colorless creature you control has Bloodlust 3. It's like 3 or 2. I couldn't make that out either, but I think it was Bloodthirst, not Bloodlust. Yeah, it's interesting being able to say, hey, essentially, what's the one? Void Winnower that like is like even creatures can't block. I think it's even can't block. And your opponents can't cast even spells. That thing's mean. This one is more so just like whatever is best for you in that combat. Essentially, just like, hey, if there's a bunch of creatures that have mana values that are even or odd, pick the one that you don't want to block. So this could be very, very detrimental to your opponents, helping getting a lot of your creatures, if not all your creatures, through. And then also your other colorless creatures, whenever they hit, I think, is it Bloodthirst? Is that when they hit? They get an extra 2 counters on them or whatever, or 3 counters. I think it's a 2 or 3 on that regardless. Yeah, being able to get extra counters on your creatures, that is very, very good. Very, very spicy. Again, Eldrazi tribal decks could definitely utilize this. It is problematic. It is a card that's like, hey, let's make my creatures near unblockable for the most part, or at least unblockable in the scenarios that I want them to be in. And also make all of them quite large. Next up, Eldritch Immunity. I think this is our last one. Eldritch Immunity. A Kindred instant Eldrazi for a single colorless mana. Target creature you control gains protection from each color until end of turn. Overload for 4 and a colorless. So this one is reminiscent of, gosh, what's the one? Like Emerge Unscathed, like those type cards essentially. Being able to give like one creature protection from one color. This, in this one, actually, I don't think the mana value was present, so let's just a guess. It could be a little more than that, so my apologies on that. It could be a little more than that. But yeah, an Eldrazi instant that costs a single mana, or maybe I would say 1 or 2 mana is probably what this cost in total. But yeah, being able to give a creature protection from every single color, that's huge. That is an amazing way to protect your creatures. And of course, overloading this for just 5 mana, that was on the card that we could see. Being able to just give it to all your creatures, again, protection from every single color, that is massive. That is huge. That is a way to, well, save any one of them essentially from targeted removal unless it's a colorless spell. Save any one of them from like a red, damage-based board wipe essentially. And of course, get your creatures through in combat too. Like, unless your opponents have colorless creatures in play, all your creatures are unblockable for 5 mana essentially, which is absolutely massive. So yeah, this kind of a spell could be absolutely huge in a, well, colorless deck essentially. I mean, it doesn't have to be a colorless deck, I guess, because it doesn't have to be a colorless deck, but having a colorless pip is very needed. I mean, obviously, if that's in the cost, we couldn't see the cost. I'm assuming that's the cost. I could be wrong, and it could be 1 colorless regardless, or it could just be like 1 or 2 mana generic. That being said, you're going to want to be able to overload this, and having that colorless pip for that is needed. So yeah, if you have just like a 5-color deck, you might not have a lot of colorless pips. I guess if you have 5-color Eldrazi, though, you probably need some colorless pips to make it work. That being said, yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And yeah, we're seeing, these Kindred type spells coming back as well. Yeah, very interesting card. Now, again, like I mentioned throughout the episode, take every single thing I've said in this episode with a grain of salt, because these cards are not confirmed to be real, nor will they ever be until actual spoiler season. Wizards, I don't think, has ever really been like, yeah, our bad, those are real. Yeah, we accidentally shipped the wrong product to someone and they got some Modern Horizons cards. Whoops. Yeah, whether or not they did that on purpose or not, that's up for debate. Whether or not the Pinkertons will be at that person's house is also up for debate. Mostly a joke, but who knows? Yeah, well, we shall see. Some interesting cards with this one. If these end up being real, let me know if you read anything different on these images. These images are on Reddit right now as well. So yeah, make sure you check those out. I'll try to make sure I link it in the description below, essentially, the Reddit post. But yeah, let me know if you're reading anything different on any of these cards. Let me know if you think that these images are real. What are you most excited about if they are real? What do you think I got wrong on this episode? And yeah, let me know in the comments below how right or wrong I am on all this, and if you think that these are real. So yeah, let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, well, stay tuned to this channel for even more exciting quick takes and spoilers when spoiler season actually gets here, which I think, again, is going to be late May, most likely, for this set. But also, we're probably going to be getting some more leaks, I would assume. If I had to guess if we're getting more leaks, yeah, we're probably getting more leaks. Wizards doesn't seem to be the best at keeping leaks in. Or not having the ship leak, I guess, is probably more so the term. But also, maybe they're doing it intentionally. Some people have said over time that it's like, hey, yeah, there's like, huh. Well, spoiler season's done. Okay, the set just came out for Outlaws Thunder Junction. I'm bored. All right, Johnson, accidentally ship someone some Modern Horizons cards. Okay. And then encourage them to take pictures with a phone from the 90s. Okay, sounds good. Okay, goodbye. Yeah, all that being said, of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.